Support for this podcast comes from the Central Valley Journalism Collaborative, connecting communities with the resources, infrastructure, and networks to ensure a vibrant local free press.
From KVPR in Fresno, this is Central Valley Daily. It's Thursday, October 17th. I'm Elizabeth Arkalian. Coming up, in Merced County, a ballot measure hopes to increase funding for public safety.
The sheriff's department is very low on deputies, they're very low on corrections staff, and it is mostly due to low pay. They're leaving to other agencies with higher pay.
In just a few minutes, we'll hear more about what the measure could do to fix this if approved. But first, today's headlines. The family of a Merced woman who was murdered 14 years ago is asking Governor Gavin Newsom not to release her killer, who was her own husband. Our news partner, the Merced Focus, reports the killer of Diane Lynn Reed Romero was originally sentenced to 16 years in prison after pleading no contest to second-degree murder. The Merced County District Attorney has previously argued against his release. Newsom's staff, meanwhile, has offered to meet with the victim's family. Another lender is suing the once successful nut-growing Assemi family. The Fresno Bee reports the lender alleges it's owed $48 million and claims a business agreement was breached. It's at least the fourth lender to sue the family over debt that's not been paid. Court filings state the family has fallen into financial difficulty. Earlier this fall, a judge appointed a receiver to oversee the current pistachio harvest. California voters will weigh in on 10 statewide ballot propositions this fall. Proposition 6 would end California's practice of forcing incarcerated people to work. Wendy Fry, with our California newsroom partner Cal Matters, has this explainer.
California's constitution bans all but one form of slavery, forced labor in prisons and jails. If Prop 6 passes, it would amend the Constitution so the state can't order an inmate to work and can't punish them for refusing a work assignment. California prisons hand out about 65,000 of these work assignments every year, according to recent state data. Many prisoners working these jobs earn less than 74 cents an hour. Prop 6 would give incarcerated people the option to work. The measure doesn't include requirements about pay, but it makes clear prisoners could earn credits to take time off their sentences. Prop 6 is backed by the state's Reparations Task Force, a group designated to repair the damage of slavery and racism for Black Californians. There is no registered opposition to the measure.
That was Wendy Fry with Cal Matters. A federal judge has delayed sentencing for the co-founders of Bitwise Industries. Jake Soberall and Irma Olguin Jr. were set to be sentenced in early November, but that's been moved to mid-December. The former entrepreneurs pleaded guilty to charges that they lied to investors in order to run their failing business. Earlier this month, news website GV Wire obtained an apology letter Soberall apparently sent to an investor. Both Soberall and Olguin Jr. issued a joint apology on social media this summer. After a string of triple-digit days at the start of October, cooler temperatures are on their way. KVPR's Crescencio Rodriguez Delgado has this weather outlook.
In the coming days, expect to feel a little fresh and maybe even a little wet. The National Weather Service office in Hanford is predicting a cold system to move into Central California that could bring unseasonably low temperatures and even rain in some places. It will stick with us through the weekend. That means by Friday, highs across the valley should dip into the 70s. A wind warning is in effect until midday Friday, possibly Saturday, in the southern Sierra Nevada and Kern County mountains. Utility companies like PG&E have warned they may shut off power to some areas to reduce fire risks. The Weather Service office doesn't expect any more days of triple digits this month. For KVPR News, I'm Crescencio Rodriguez Delgado.
Support for Central Valley Daily comes from Fresno Mazda, a member of the Prieto Automotive family, celebrating the grand opening of the newly renovated showroom on Thursday, October 24th. This all-ages event features live music, refreshments, and a gift for the first 100 guests. myfresnomazda.com.
And now to our main story. Merced County made national headlines earlier this year after Sheriff Vernon Warnke publicly stated that the department was understaffed and unable to answer certain emergency calls.
We're talking about no to cleaning up homeless encampments. We're talking about no to taking reports for theft. We're talking about no to taking reports for you getting beat up.
That's Sheriff Warnke talking on Fox News earlier this May. Warnke said at the time that department pay and benefits, or lack of them, was the reason the department was struggling. But on the ballot this election is Measure R, which would raise county taxes and hopes to solve some of the issues outlined by Sheriff Warnke. Warnke has endorsed the measure. Brianna Vaccari, a reporter with the Merced Focus newsroom, joined me for a conversation about all of this and details what Measure R's approval would mean for Merced County.
Supporters of Measure R and law enforcement officials have called the situation in Merced County a public safety crisis right now. Basically, the sheriff's department is very low on deputies. They're very low on corrections staff, and it is mostly due to low pay. They're leaving to other agencies with higher pay. There are 2 fire stations that are set to close among some consolidations, because Merced County is the only county in the state that has fire staffing below the state minimum requirement. In addition to that, the district attorney's office has somewhere around 40 homicide cases that are open, and they are down prosecutors. I think the district attorney said by about 30% of her numbers of prosecutors. So there is a staffing shortage for sure.
Yeah, this sounds like a broad issue. So which departments exactly would benefit from Measure R?
So it would be the public safety departments, which are the sheriff's department, the fire department, and the district attorney's office.
Okay, and why is the timing of this measure significant?
Well, as you know, the sheriff's department has been chronically understaffed for over a year now. But in addition to that, the 2 fire stations in Merced County are slated to close by the end of the year. But that is depending on the passage of this measure. Additionally, the city of Merced passed a public safety sales tax earlier this year. So this is the second time Merced city residents will see a public safety sales tax on their ballot in 1 year.
Wow. Yes, I know Merced County Sheriff Vernon Warnke had been pleading for support for his department for a while now. We spoke about a year ago, and he had said the staffing situation at that point was just absolutely dire. In that year since, has it gotten worse? Is Measure R seen as like a solution to that problem? How does this measure fit into that overall issue?
So over the summer, the sheriff deputies did secure a 10% wage increase through their labor negotiations. However, the sheriff's department is still really banking on Measure R, as is the fire department and the district attorney's office. They really anticipate Measure R helping to sustain staffing levels over the term of the sales tax measure.
Do we know how much the tax would be and how much it's expected to generate?
Yes. So the sales tax is a 0.5-cent sales tax. That's what's being proposed. And officials anticipate it will generate about $25 million annually.
Okay, now interestingly, the Sheriff Vernon Warnke told you he is against taxes, but he said this is really the only way he sees forward, right? Why is that?
That's correct. So although the deputies did secure a raise, Sheriff Warnke believes that that will only stop the bleeding. It won't actually attract deputies to come to Merced County. And so he is, a conservatively leaning sheriff. He does not like taxes. He does not want to raise taxes. But he says that this measure is the only way he can see moving forward in it with a sustainable staffing level.
So to be clear, what does voting yes on Measure R mean for Merced County voters versus voting no?
If you vote yes on Measure R, that means you support a 0.5-cent sales tax increase. If you vote no, it means you do not want a 0.5-cent sales tax increase to benefit public safety.
And then subsequently, those fire stations could potentially close.
They are already scheduled to close, so Measure R is considered a lifeline to potentially keep them open.
So what does Measure R need to pass?
It needs 2/3 voter approval, so at least 66% of yes votes.
Do you think that that's possible?
It's unclear at this point because 3 cities in Merced County already have public safety sales tax measures in place. So it's unclear if voters in those city limits will, be swayed to also support a countywide public safety sales tax.
Definitely. So if Measure R does not pass, what's next?
Well, the sheriff thinks that crime will spike in the county. Those 2 fire stations will definitely close. The district attorney's office worries that there will be a backlog of cases because there won't be enough prosecutors to work on them. And the sheriff and, the Board of Supervisors does not want to close the fire stations, but they feel they might be forced to if this doesn't.
Okay, is there anything else Merced County voters need to know about this measure?
Yes, one interesting thing about this sales tax measure is that there is a cities and town program written into it. So if voters do approve the sales tax measure, incorporated cities such as Merced, Los Banos, Atwater will receive a portion of the tax revenue that's generated.
Brianna Vaccari with the Merced Focus. Thanks for joining me.
Thanks, Liz.
Elsewhere, the city of Clovis is considering a similar measure this November. Measure Y would authorize an additional sales tax of 1% with revenue dedicated to public safety and city services. Kern County narrowly passed a public safety tax of its own in 2022 that only applies to unincorporated areas. And that does it for today's episode. If you have feedback or a story idea, we'd love to hear from you. Email podcast@kvpr.org. Today's episode was produced by Jonathan Linden and KVPR with support from the Central Valley Journalism Collaborative. I'm Elizabeth Arkalian. Find the latest local news anytime at kvpr.org.